Nothing in the Lou Brydges Show is intended to be legal analysis, legal advice, or legal recommendations that would be applicable to your particular situation. Everyone in foreclosure or underwater with their mortgage are encouraged to seek legal counsel for a review of your specific situation. Welcome to the weekly broadcast of the Lou Brydges Show, telling the truth about the foreclosure crisis and the greatest financial crime in history that created it. Are you in foreclosure, at risk of foreclosure, or underwater with your mortgage? Do you know someone who is? Every week on this show, you'll get real answers from a real attorney. Lou Brydges will explain options in the foreclosure process. He'll talk about defective mortgages, mortgage restructuring, loan modification, short sale negotiation, and discuss what to look for when choosing a foreclosure defense attorney. Lou is an experienced foreclosure defense lawyer on the front lines of mortgage defense and litigation. Lou is dedicated to helping you keep your property. And now, it's time for the Lou Brydges Show and the truth about foreclosure. Here's your host, Lou Brydges.
Good morning, Chicago. About 200 years ago, Thomas Jefferson wrote a warning for all of us, and I'm going to read from it. Thomas Jefferson wrote, "I believe that banking institutions are more dangerous to our liberties than standing armies. If the American people ever allow private banks to control the issue of their currency, first by inflation, then by deflation, the banks and the corporations that will grow up around them will deprive the people of all their property until their children wake up homeless on the continent their fathers conquered." The news this past week shows that we need to heed this warning as a country, as a people. We really need to come together. I'm reading from the New York Times, an inquiry into the storage of commodities by big banks, a tactic devised by Goldman Sachs, which, as you recall, was the investment bank that put together that was largely responsible for putting together the entire mortgage fiasco that artificially inflated the cost, not the value, the cost of American homes by 131% over a 10-year period, and then bet on the inevitable bust of the artificial bubble. The tactic devised by Goldman Sachs and other financial players that has inflated the price of aluminum and ultimately cost consumers billions of dollars is coming under federal scrutiny. The Commodities Futures Trading Commission has taken the first step in an examination of warehouse operations that are being controlled by Goldman Sachs and several other major banks to store vast amounts of aluminum. The operations were the subject of an article by the New York Times on Sunday. The commission has told the firms to retain internal documents and emails related to the businesses, according to people who have spoken on the condition of anonymity. The call comes from a Senate committee prepares to open hearings on Tuesday into how Wall Street has extended its reach beyond banking and into global markets for all essential commodities. The panel is expected to focus on how banks have taken advantage of loosened federal regulation to buy warehouses, pipelines, oil tankers, and other infrastructure used to store basic goods and deliver them to consumers. Basic goods, warehouses, pipelines, oil tankers. This is what the banks are doing with our deposit money, and this is what the banks by
so they're helping bringing the price of gas up?
Everything. Gas, every commodity, and including the transportation of these commodities. You see, Thomas Jefferson was a brilliant man, and he foresaw this. It's not standing armies. It's not citizens having the right to bear arms that are the problem. The biggest worry you will have in the future, the biggest concern will not be enemies from foreign shores. It will be the evil people in the banking industry. A few small handful of people that are allowed to control the issue of currency. They do so, as we all know from the mortgage-backed security swindle that they perpetrated upon the country, creating over a 10-year period $5.5 trillion of the illusion of $5.5 trillion of capital that didn't exist. But before the illusion disappears, they converted that illusion into two pieces of paper called a note and a mortgage that they sold for $5.5 trillion more than they were worth. They did so by doing anything they could to get you as an American homeowner to sign a note and a mortgage for as much as the property is worth. And by essentially buying off the originators, buying off the appraisers, you take the average home that cost $100,000 in 1998 and it cost $231,000 in 2008. That's 231,000, 131% increase. You multiply that 131% which comes out to about an average of about $130,000, times 56 million residential mortgages in the country, and you come up with $5.5 trillion of capital that doesn't exist. It's not a $300,000 house. It's a $150,000 house. Costs $75 a foot to build. It's a 2,000 square foot house. That's $150,000. Add a little profit and a little cost of the land and everything, maybe $180, but not $380. But when you got an originator that'll fund, get you a mortgage for 0%, tell you, and when that, and in 2 years when the interest rate kicks in, they'll give you another 0%. And the appraiser is being hired by them, comes up with a ridiculous appraisal that's pretty soon the lie becomes almost self-sustaining. You get the American people on the hook for $5.5 trillion based on the illusion that there was capital to support it, but there wasn't. It wasn't a it wasn't a $280,000 or $380,000 house. Now they extend that, just like Thomas Jefferson said. The banks and the corporations that will grow up around them. It's not just issuing the currency. It's not just it's now controlling infrastructure, warehouses. I'm reading from the New York Times, a new Senate committee. The banks are being called to explain why is it that you have warehouses, pipelines, oil tankers, and other infrastructure used to store and transport basic consumer goods. And the overreaching question is whether banks should control this. Could this pose a risk? The banks were never given a bailout. The bailout was AIG. The banks were given money that they were supposed to use to stimulate the economy, an ill-conceived idea by Hank Paulson, but then one that failed, and one that, if you've read the Too Big to Fail and studied some of the and read some of the other books about it, it was like, duh. They are going. Somebody said to Hank Paulson right after they forced them to take this $550 billion infusion of capital, they are going to loan it out, aren't they? Oh, we never had enough strings attached that they have to do that, and they didn't. They paid it back right away because they don't want the government sitting on their boards of directors. Now, I want to point something out. Somebody once said that it is for us, the living, to take from those who gave the last full measure of their devotion a renewed conviction that government of the people, by the people, and for the people shall not perish from this earth. I want to point something out. Government of the people, by the people, and for the people. A bank you are none of the above. You are none of the above. Yet the banks are spending $1 million a day on lobbying efforts to be essentially influence the government, to be a part of the government. But the phrase, our whole concept, government of the people, by the people, and for the people. You, Mr. Bank, are none of the above. Get out of government. You have no business being a government and no business influencing government. They have taken over branches of government. The Office of Comptroller of the Currency was supposed to be their regulator. I mean, if you listen to the show, you know the story about how the OCC, as part of the Independent Foreclosure Review, found that the major banks that service the mortgages have been committing mass fraud upon the courts of our land. And therefore, they entered into a new agreement that they didn't have to conduct any more independent foreclosure reviews, and they were going to send a couple $1,000s to everybody they found that had been the victim of one of the abuses in the foreclosure or servicing process, as it's called. And then the Senate committee chairman, or the member, Elizabeth Warren, asked the representative from the Office of Comptroller of the Currency, what is it that was found specifically in these reviews? I mean, all you've said is that it was abuses in the foreclosure process. What exactly were these abuses? And the representative of the Office of Comptroller of the Currency claimed a privilege. He would not answer her question, the senator. An employee of ours, of the Office of Comptroller of the Currency, would not answer a question from a representative of ours, duly appointed, member of the Senate Banking and Finance Committee. He claimed a privilege. What privilege is that? Privilege from disclosure of a criminal activity on the part of a private institution, a bank, that you're supposed to be regulating? Who are you? Are you the bank, or are you the government regulator who's supposed to ferret this out? And when you do find evidence of these abuses, all right, we're getting to the end of our segment. Mike has some information about websites and things that he wants to read.
If you want to find out more information, interact with us on our Facebook page, facebook.com/The Lou Bridges Show. That's Bridges with a Y, The Lou Bridges Show. That's at facebook.com. 224-513-1231. We'll be happy to answer any of your questions and see if you have anything for the show as well. And FightIllinoisForeclosures.com, a great website that Scott.
American people need to stand up and get together. And it's not just fighting a foreclosure. It's far beyond that. That's why this show is not supposed to be just about foreclosure. It's about the truth. We got to get the truth out. And we're not alone. There are people around the country. And you go to websites like Living Lies and StopForeclosureFraud.com and a lot of others. And I'm sure that you know of a lot that I don't know. We need to get together, people, because we're going to lose it. And it's very important that we not lose this.
America needs to talk about it. We need to talk about it at dinner. We need to talk about it at parties. We need to talk about it with our friends, our family. So many people don't talk about it.
And we just need to disabuse this notion that that the banks were the victim of 56 million Americans who woke up one morning in the last 10 years and decided to commit bank fraud that day. That's not what happened.
Not by a long shot.
Welcome back to the Lou Bridges Show with Louis Brydges, one of Chicago's leading foreclosure defense attorneys. Here's Lou to tell you what to look for when hiring a foreclosure defense attorney and how to avoid being conned on AM 560. The Answer.
Welcome back to the Lou Bridges Show. We're going to continue in the same vein here. We came across, one of our investigators came across a price list from a company called DocX. DocX services the banks that service the mortgages. And one of the things, we've been saying for so long, we've been telling the judges for 4 years that, these are fabricated documents. It's a robo-signed document. It's a forged document. And we've been, cross-checking and everything. And that's why it's very important. Don't let your case go to default. We can get default judgments vacated if we move quickly. But if the default's been in place for a long time, it's like, the judges are, well, Mr. Brydges, your client, this case has been pending for, 6 months, a year. So many people are so proud. Well, geez, I've been, representing myself for a year and asking continuances, and I've been living in my house for a year. And the case hasn't gone. It's going to go somewhere, and, they're sandbagging you. You're making a big mistake. You're being sandbagged because there is evidence but as time passes, it becomes stale. You sat on your rights. You didn't assert them. You didn't care. And it's why you need an attorney. And for loan modifications, I really think you need an attorney is my recommendation because you're going to get the runaround. And I'm going to talk about that first. But first, let me read to you some of the things from this DocX, the banks that service mortgages. And again, the major banks don't own any of the mortgages. And we're talking about the 12 major banks. It's really about 5 major banks: Wells Fargo, Bank of America, Citi, J.P. Morgan Chase, U.S. Bank, Deutsche Bank, Wells Fargo. What they have here is this price list. Create missing intervening assignments. We've been pointing out to the judges that, hey, there's a gap in the chain of title. They don't own the mortgage. We could deal with the people who do own the mortgage because they would rather restructure. It's in their better business interest to restructure the mortgage, quickly turn it into a performing mortgage, fully secured by a house that's worth equal to or more than the amount of the note. Foreclosure is not a good answer for them. Now they're going to have to sell an empty house on a flooded market. They're going to have to hire a real estate broker. They're going to have to maintain the property taxes. They'll be lucky nationwide if they get 40 cents on the dollar in foreclosure. The true owner of the mortgage, the trust, which is public employee benefit funds, they would rather have the mortgage restructured. That is a reduction of principal balance to reflect the true fair market value and a modification to so help work with the homeowner. But the banks that foreclose, they charge 30 times the fees for a mortgage in foreclosure. That is why they've been sabotaging all the efforts at modification. But they have trouble actually foreclosing if you contest the lawsuit with an attorney because they don't have a lot of the documents that they need because the whole thing was a scam. And a lot of the little niceties like the assignments through those SPVs, the special purpose vehicles to the trust that's supposed to own the mortgage, they never did those. They did those by an electronic registration with the MERS system, the thinking being that they would go back later and create the missing assignments. But the thing is it's too late to do that because these trusts were static trusts that closed. I know this gets very, very complicated from a legal standpoint, which is why I think, my opinion, you need a qualified, competent attorney who understands all this to raise all these points and then to force the bank to give you a fair deal. We're not telling you to get the home free. I mean, we could fight for that. That's not actually what we try to do. We're trying to get a fair deal. And the fair deal is on a $200,000 or $150,000 house is a $150,000 or $140,000 mortgage, not a $350,000 mortgage or $250,000, but a $150,000 mortgage. It was your appraiser who overpraised the thing, and it was your originator who, and you guys who artificially inflated this the cost, not the value. The value of this home is $150,000. That's what the mortgage should be at most. But see, they have problems. It says create note allonge, $12.95. You call this outfit, geez, we got to foreclose now and we don't have an assignment. So you just call up this DocX and they create missing intervening assignments. They're advertising the fraud they commit. It's a cure defective assignment. Well, if it was a defective assignment, the cure it means that they fabricate, and we find this all the time. I can't tell you the number of cases we found, and we have this database and sources where our paralegals look, and the assignment from Green Tree to Bank of America was signed by a vice president of Bank of America. The assignment from Countrywide was signed 3 years after Countrywide ceased to exist by some supposed vice president of Countrywide. Taylor Bean Financial, all the ones that are out of business. You have to force modification on these servers, and you do that, you need to find out who actually owns the mortgage, and there's a whole strategy. But there's a lot of meat. Somebody wrote, an attorney, a partner of Neil Garfeld's down in Florida, Danielle Kelly, who I've had the pleasure of meeting. I'd like to someday. She's very, 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 very smart and clever. She writes, there's a lot of red meat that can be used to bring relief to the homeowner and sanctions against the servicer that was negligently or intentionally avoiding its responsibilities under HAMP. Danielle points out that according to the Department of Justice judgment against Bank of America, there are direct guidelines which Bank of America has intentionally breached as a matter of policy. Under HAMP, the server is required to submit the proposal for underwriting prior to offering the trial payment plan, which means that if you have a trial payment, you have qualified for a permanent modification. None of this, no more. It's under review. The trial is just if you make your payments in time, you get the permanent modification. But the thing is, the dirty little lie is, among the thousands of dirty little lies by these banks, is not the home the banks want, it's the foreclosure judgment that they want. Now, this gets very complicated, but it has to go to, the banks are not foreclosing because they have to. They're foreclosing because they want to. The parties are attempting to foreclose on the property because they've already been paid large fees in excess of the principal amount of the loan demanded. And they will owe these profits and fees back to the investment bankers that paid them to pretend to be lenders, to pretend to be the creditors, and pretend to be the right parties with the right to foreclose. I'm telling you, these major banks don't own one mortgage that they're foreclosing on. They are the servicer. They can foreclose in the name of the servicer under most state laws, including Illinois. Although, if the Code of Civil Procedure were properly applied to the actions under the IML, which it should be, when you bring an action as a server, you should bring it what's called FUBO, for the use and benefit of. It should be Bank of America for the use and benefit of Mortgage-Backed Security Trust number 2007-4. On behalf of the trustee of that trust. But they don't. And the judges for a long time allowed them to get away with that. But that's changing. Oh, boy. Is that changing? Even in Cook County, the judges are starting to require the basic proofs that were not required for a long time. I mean, there's no question. And I think a lot of the judges are perhaps reluctant now because basically to try to correct things now would be to admit that they probably signed tens of thousands of wrongful foreclosures, wrongfully dispossessed tens of thousands of Illinois citizens, their friends and neighbors and people of their community, of their homes, wrongfully dispossessed by not following the rules of the Code of Civil Procedure, by giving the banks an exemption from the Code of Civil Procedure. Where was that ever written? There's a provision in the IMFL that says this is the exclusive procedure for actions to foreclose on a home. Well, the Mechanics Lien Act's the exclusive procedure to foreclose on a mechanics lien, but the Code of Civil Procedure still applies, and the Supreme Court rules still apply. So, there's no question that the foreclosure mills and the banks They are political contributors, in large, political contributors. And some of the judges in Cook County are now sitting on the appellate court. And that is a situation that is the truth. And
draw your own conclusions.
This is a show about the truth. And, the affidavits, I read some from the affidavits, that here we were instructed to, from Bank of America, the whistleblowers, if anybody wants to see these affidavits, we publish them on our website. We've also put on our Facebook page at the show, maybe any of you have heard about the infamous Elizabeth Warren video that went viral from MSNBC Squawk Box this past about 2 weeks ago now, week and a half ago. And for those of you who I know Squawk Boxes, I never heard of it, but it's some show that airs on the daytime on MSNBC or something like that. And Elizabeth Warren she is really good. She just really called to task and really just decimated this moderator of the show who has since been fired. So the video, about 5-minute video, goes on YouTube and it becomes viral, goes viral immediately. And so now MSNBC exercises copyright rights and they ban it from YouTube. It's off the MSNBC site. You can't find it anywhere. And the moderator lost his job. But there is one place you can find it. And sue me, MSNBC. I invite you. It's on our Facebook page.
Facebook.com/The Lou Bridges Show. That's Bridges with a Y.
We're not going to go down without a fight. We may go down, but we're not going to go down easy. Bring it on.
Brydges of the law firm Brydges & O & Associates, one of the leading foreclosure defense firms in the Chicago area, rejoins you now on the Lou Bridges Show. Here's Lou on how you might avoid foreclosure and deal with a mortgage that's underwater.
Welcome back, folks. We're okay. We're going to, I want to thank everyone for coming out and seeing us at the Rock and the Troops last Saturday. We had a great time there, met a lot of you. And Mike got in a little bit of a discussion with somebody who is somebody who still clings to this notion that this whole foreclosure mess was caused by people, the American people, scamming the banks and getting liar loans and the like. And of course, there was one or two of those, maybe 1 or 2,000, maybe 10,000, maybe 1 million. But there's 56 million residential mortgages in the country. And let me ask you, were you flipping homes and perpetrating this big scam on the banks and buying and selling and making trying to profit on the easy money and cheap, No, I don't think every one of you was, but maybe you were. In any event, it occurred to me that that's not the people that we see. That's not the people that's not the people we represent. We represent American families trying to keep their kids in the school and trying to keep the family together in the home, in the community. And, Mike is an intake person. Everybody who calls in gets a free consultation. You have to go through a little bit of a screening process, give the information to Mike, make sure you're serious and see if there's anything that we might be able to help you on. But if you call in and you give your information, you get a free consultation, usually about an hour. I mean, from either Scott or myself, not even an associate attorney or even a senior associate attorney. It's either Scott or myself. But I wanted Mike's going to share with you. We're going to, at the risk of, a big risk, we're going to let Mike take over a little portion of the show, and he's going to share with you the types of people that we represent and who call in. Because we're not representing people who did liar loans or who were scamming the system. We're representing American families, just regular folks trying to stay in the home. But Mike,
So I had this rather heated discussion this past Saturday. I was at Rockin' the Troops, which, by the way, a little shout out to the nice crew of people that stuck around for the show after the rain. So anyway, I'm out there. I'm passing out some flyers and talking to people about the show. Met a lot of great people, and virtually everybody, once they kind of heard what the show was about, was happy to take the flyer. But I did run across this one guy, and he says, no way. The people that are not paying are holding the rest of us down. It's their own fault. They're breaking the law by not paying. And we got into, and I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but we got into this pretty heated discussion about this. And my point at the time was, aren't the banks supposed to be held to those same laws because they broke the laws? They broke a lot more laws and a lot bigger laws than the people have.
And there's only a few people that, I've come across, and we probably interviewed 1,000 people. I've come across maybe 5 or 10 that they were scamming the system. Okay. And we don't represent them, Right. I think actually we did. For a while we represented a couple. We charged them a big fee so we could represent poorer people for less.
Well, and on that note, since then I have talked to more people, and it really just sort of clarified for me. I was talking to a lady just 2 days ago, and she paid everything on time. Everything on time, everything on time. She was starting to have things be a little bit tighter, and she contacted the bank that she'd never been late with and was counting on them to provide some help with a modification. To help her stay in her home. And she actually, while doing this modification, spent every bit of her money to keep that payment on time. She spent every bit of her money out of her 401k. She went and hocked her jewelry to keep making these payments. By the time that she calls us, she's basically broke. And I've heard that type of story over and over and over again. Does that sound like the type of person that is out there trying to get a bad loan in the beginning? A person out there trying to get a bad loan isn't going to spend every dollar that they have to save it.
The other thing is we have, a lot of people, who, the whole family is being deprived of a family experience because they've got a $300,000 or $250,000 mortgage in a house that's worth about $150,000. So they're paying over $1,000 a month more than they should. And they're not taking a summer trip with the kids. And the kids are going, your 8-year-old son there's going to be one summer when he was 8 years old. And after that summer, there's never going to be a summer in which that son was 8. Yep. And, the family trip out west, even if it's just get in the car and drive and go to Yellowstone or Jellystone Park or something, or just whatever.
Or Sturgis.
It's a shame. And it's costing, it's more, what we're talking about here is we're talking about family homes. The value of the family home is in large part from the family that lives there. It takes care of it. It puts up a cute little stone or white picket fence and, calls the garden and takes care of the land and everything. And the banks have actually taken that, bundled it and packaged it and sold it to pension funds for far more than it was really should cost. And the whole scam was dependent upon two things. You create these two pieces of paper, the note and the mortgage signed by an American family. And then you can sell that for $5.5 trillion more than it's really worth. And they're on the hook for that $5.5 trillion, and the house isn't worth $5.5 trillion. So you're deprived. It's the greatest transfer of wealth in human history, the greatest financial crime in human history by the American banks.
We now return to the Lou Bridges Show, telling the truth about the foreclosure crisis and the greatest financial crime in history. Here's Lou Bridges, an attorney on the front lines of the ongoing battle for our land.
People, we've been through crises before as American people, and that's always when actually the real true Americans have risen and to the challenge, and things have actually turned out better for it. I think somebody once said, let's not lose an opportunity to take advantage of this crisis. And set things right, because it takes a crisis to set things right. And somebody once said, Winston Churchill said, you can always count on Americans to do the right thing. After they've tried everything else, of course, but they will eventually do the right thing. And that's, it's going to take, but it starts with understanding a very complicated, but understanding what the truth is. It's all about the truth versus the lie. And that's why we have this show, is to start spreading the truth. Doing my little thing, and there's all over the country. There's I referred to us a pimple on an elephant's ass. All they would ever do is just sit down and crush us if we ever got to be more than a nuisance. But we're not alone. There's others like us out there with radio shows and blogs and websites, and there's attorneys that are doing it. There's attorneys that are doing it just to scam the public, and there's modification outfits that are doing it. And hopefully we've been working with Lisa Madigan's office, and every time we come across a loan modification service that is not an attorney that charges people money up front, we report it to the Attorney General. And all of you should do the same thing, because Lisa Madigan's doing a fine job of policing this. She's brought a lot of these, but the law is that you cannot charge money up front to do a loan modification service, to help do assistance loan modification if you're not an attorney. Now, we charge, but we're going to defend a foreclosure case, and we're negotiating a loan modification with principal reduction, a restructuring of the mortgage. And we're lawyers. And you need a lawyer to do it because it involves legal analysis. It involves legal analysis of your rights. It involves assertion of legal rights that you have that you can use as leverage to negotiate, to have some power to negotiate, and not just be taken advantage of. And so anybody who tries to charge you for loan modification says you don't need an attorney, you can do it yourself, we can do it. You can try to do it yourself. You can try to have somebody else help you, but don't pay any money to anybody other than an attorney. And when you hire an attorney, make sure they understand things about the investigations, the audits, the forensic auditing, looking at all the documents associated with the solicitation, the origination of the loan, the solicitation, the application, the processing of the application, the closing and the servicing of the loan. And then you need a lawyer that understands about the securitization of the loan, because that is where they have a lot of weaknesses and a lot of gaps that become your strengths from a legal standpoint. But it requires legal analysis of this. So you need to have an attorney that understands that. And if the attorney hasn't heard of Neil Garfeld or Max Gardner or Stop Foreclosure Fraud or Living Lies, I suggest you to interview another attorney, because those are the fundamental basic starts of, that's where the sort of the depository of a lot of the information. There's others. I was very pleased to come across I didn't bring the book, so I'm not going to mention it, but I was very pleased to come across a client brought in a book published by an attorney in Texas. And I'm looking through it, and it's so beautiful. It's exactly what we've been doing. And so somebody down in Texas has got this whole game plan, this whole strategy, this whole analysis, derived from, in part, Neil Garfeld, of course, is the grandfather of all foreclosure defense attorneys, and Professor Adam Levitin of Georgetown University, who has emerged as a leading academic authority, and it testifies before Congress all the time. Of course, the University of Cincinnati Law Review article that totally decimated the MERS concept. And there's a lot more. I mean, I spend 2-3 hours a night. Of course, I'm a little obsessive about this, very obsessive about this thing. It's become my mission in life, but I spend 2-3 hours a night, 5-6 nights a week, reading through the stuff, that is gathered from around the country. Cases out in New York. I mean, this past couple of weeks, there's just been some humongous legal developments. Exactly what we've been saying. A failed securitization means that the trust doesn't own the mortgage, which means that the bank that's servicing doesn't have a service agreement with the owner of the mortgage, which means that they've been attempting to collect a debt that is not owed to them, which means that they are liable to you under the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act, the Fair Debt Credit Reporting Act. And the originator who committed the consumer fraud, that consumer fraud follows with the mortgage, maybe not with the note, which is a piece of commercial paper, and you can become a holder in due course, not subject to defenses that one might have from the original payee in the note. But on the mortgage, if the mortgage was procured by fraud, by unlawful activities, then the original mortgagee was Countrywide or Taylor Bean Financial, which are out of business for all the fraud they committed. The holder of the mortgage today, whatever trust holds it, is subject to some of those same affirmative defenses: unlawful inducement, fraud in the inducement. Now, I'm not saying you're going to get your home free and clear of a mortgage. If that's what you want, there are people out there trying to do that. And the quiet title actions are going to come into play, and there's a lot of people that are going to get their homes free and clear of a mortgage. But really what's more realistic, I think, in my view, is a fair reformation. This is a $150,000 house or a $100,000 house, then the mortgage should be $150,000 or $140,000. But the vast majority of people that we represent are underwater. And if you're underwater, the strategic default is not a crime. It's lawful to breach a contract. First of all, you have an excuse to breach the contract because of all the unlawful inducement and fraud in the inducement. And we confirm that before we recommend a strategic default. We confirm with a preliminary investigation that we will find something, which we always will in just about every case, but we confirm that. And we offer a service where you come in and we'll do an investigation. If you don't want to just suspend payment,
until you know that you've got there's hard, fast, admissible evidence of unlawful inducement. That's part of one of our programs. But you need to call us for a free consultation.
224-513-1231. That's 224-513-1231. And don't forget, join us at Facebook.com/The Lou Bridges Show. That's Bridges with a Y.
But never give up the land. Never give up the land.
Welcome back to the Lou Bridges Show with Louis Bridges, one of Chicago's leading foreclosure defense attorneys. Here's Lou to tell you what to look for when hiring a foreclosure defense attorney and how to avoid being conned on AM 560. The Answer.
This thing about the inquiry into the possible storage of commodities by big banks and the gathering and just on a systematic basis, it's kind of ironic. A lot of the warehouses where they're storing all this stuff of metals and the pipelines and oil tankers and other infrastructure that they've been using and hoarding. Of course, I don't know that the oil tankers are, or maybe the pipes for the pipelines or something, but they're using a lot of these vacant factories and vacant abandoned places in Detroit, as it turns out, because it's kind of hidden away there, and that's maybe why Detroit is forced into bankruptcy, because obviously there aren't many people with all this news about the bankruptcy. They're going to be moving to Detroit in the near future, and see, they manipulate a lot of things, and there's a lot of things that are just very suspicious, and this inquiry comes out, and the commodities prices and the CFTC, which and the delays at Goldman's Detroit area warehouses. Why is Goldman Sachs own a bunch of warehouses in Detroit anyway? I mean, they're an investment bank out of New York. What are they storing there? They're owned by a subsidiary called Metro International Trade Services to make aluminum more expensive nearly everywhere in the country because of a formula used to determine the cost of the metal.
Is that where the fire was this last week?
Yeah. There's a saying, sometimes you may sound almost a little goofy, but, sometimes there's a saying about the truth. The truth always goes through three stages. At first, it's ridiculed, and then it's opposed, and then it's accepted as common knowledge. And I think we're past the ridiculing stage because everything we've been saying has been proven out. And, they did try to ridicule us, and successfully 4 years ago when I got into this. A lot of the judges were trying to intimidate us, and had judges tell people that you don't need this attorney. And but that's all changing now, and we've got some very brave, courageous judges that started and led this. And Lake and McHenry County, we've got good judges. DuPage County, Will County, we've got cases out in Kane, in Kendall County, and Boone County, and there's a lot of new judges in the 20th floor in Cook County, and there's a new sheriff in town, as you might say, and things are being done, according to Hoyle, a little bit more. And it's very encouraging from my standpoint. And we've got associate attorneys they didn't go through the really hard times, but that's okay. They're really into it. So thank you for joining us. Come back next week. We'll try to go back to a little bit to the old format and less of this. But don't lose hope, because, as long as the truth is a way of coming out, and if you got the truth in your sheath, you've got the sword of Excalibur. And he who can extract the truth, he who has the truth, becomes invincible, because eventually the truth will prevail.
Don't forget, join us at Facebook.com/The Lou Bridges Show. Bridges with a Y. 224-513-1231.
You've been listening to the weekly radio broadcast of the Lou Bridges Show with attorney Louis Bridges, telling the truth about foreclosure. Have you received threats of foreclosure? Are you in a foreclosure right now, seeking a loan modification, considering strategic default, or any other legal action? Know and protect your rights, and do not give up the land. Lou Bridges' passion is to help you keep your home and achieve your legal goals. To receive a free consultation, which may help you decide how to defend against foreclosure, understand your options, and learn learn what to look for in choosing a foreclosure defense attorney. Call 224-513-1231. That's 224-513-1231. Or visit FightIllinoisForeclosures.com. That's FightIllinoisForeclosures.com. Get real answers from a real foreclosure defense firm and discover the legal tools at your disposal. Tune in to AM 560 The Answer next Saturday morning at 8 for The Lou Bridges Show, telling the truth about foreclosure.